Michelle Pfeiffer. The name itself still turns heads, decades after her first appearance on screen. At 67, she remains one of those rare stars who seem untouched by time, yet enriched by it. Once hailed as one of the most beautiful women in the world, Pfeiffer was more than a face. She was a presence, an energy, and an enigma. In the 1980s and 1990s, her magnetism lit up screens across the globe. Scarface, The Witches of Eastwick, Dangerous Liaisons, Batman Returns. Every role carved her deeper into the Hollywood legend. But while her beauty captivated millions, her talent silenced critics who once doubted her depth. She could play seductive, fragile, fierce, or broken, sometimes all at once. And she did it with a haunting subtlety that no one could imitate. Yet behind that radiant smile and commanding presence was a woman quietly struggling to balance fame, self-worth, and identity. Pfeiffer grew weary of the constant scrutiny, the endless judgment of her appearance and her choices. And just when Hollywood expected her to fade, she did something few stars dared. She walked away. Years later, when she returned, audiences were stunned. Still breathtaking, still powerful, but wiser, Michelle Pfeiffer reemerged as proof that real beauty transcends age. Today, at 67, she carries her grace like armor, her lines like poetry, her silence like strength. When you see her now, you don't just gasp because she looks incredible. You gasp because she is. Before the world knew her as the silver screen goddess with piercing blue eyes and unmatched grace, Michelle Pfeiffer was just a California girl with quiet dreams and a fire she didn't yet understand. Born in Santa Ana in 1958, she wasn't raised among the glitter and excess of Hollywood, far from it. Her father was an air conditioning contractor, her mother a homemaker. The Pfeiffer family lived modestly, with Michelle growing up shy, curious, and introspective. Fame was never her goal. In fact, she often said she stumbled into acting almost by accident. After finishing high school, she took a series of odd jobs: grocery clerk, court stenographer, and even a beauty pageant contestant. It was that last experience that opened an unexpected door. Winning the Miss Orange County pageant in 1978 gave her visibility, and soon after she moved to Los Angeles to try her hand at acting. But success didn't come easily. Casting directors dismissed her as too pretty, a face that couldn't possibly hold depth. She was typecast in forgettable television roles and B-movies that never captured her true potential. Then came Grease 2, 1982, a role that was supposed to catapult her to fame, but instead nearly derailed her career. The film flopped critically and commercially, and Hollywood quickly labeled her as just another pretty failure. Many actresses would have given up. Michelle didn't. Instead, she went back to the drawing board, trained harder, and refused to let one bad film define her. Her turning point came just a year later, when she auditioned for Scarface, 1983. Against the advice of many, she fought for the role of Elvira Hancock, the icy, tragic wife of Tony Montana. Director Brian De Palma wasn't convinced at first, but when Pfeiffer walked into the room, her calm confidence and quiet sadness captivated him. She wasn't acting. She was Elvira. Scarface changed everything. In a film dominated by Al Pacino's fiery energy, Pfeiffer's restrained intensity drew attention. She brought elegance to chaos and vulnerability to excess. Hollywood took notice. This was no longer just a beautiful face. This was a serious actress with a haunting presence. In the years that followed, she refused to play safe. Films like The Witches of Eastwick and Dangerous Liaisons proved her range. Critics who once doubted her now compared her to icons like Katharine Hepburn and Faye Dunaway. Still, even as her fame grew, Michelle remained an outsider in spirit, uncomfortable with the fame, uninterested in parties, and wary of the Hollywood machine that had tried to define her. Her rise wasn't just a story of beauty, it was a story of defiance. A woman who fought the system that underestimated her and came out stronger, sharper, and infinitely more interesting. By the end of the 1980s, Michelle Pfeiffer was no longer Hollywood's pretty newcomer. She was its most mesmerizing enigma, a woman who had earned her throne through grace, grit, and quiet rebellion. By the early 1990s, Michelle Pfeiffer had become a name that shimmered above every marquee in Hollywood. She wasn't just a movie star, she was the movie star. Every role she touched seemed to turn to gold. In films like The Fabulous Baker Boys, Batman Returns, and The Age of Innocence, Pfeiffer displayed an emotional range that left critics in awe and audiences spellbound. She could play a torch singer, a villainess, or a high-society woman with equal conviction. But beneath the glimmering surface of red carpets and flashing cameras, Pfeiffer was quietly unraveling under the weight of perfection. Her beauty had become both a blessing and a burden. While it opened doors, it also created expectations that were impossible to live up to. People didn't just admire Michelle, they idolized her, and that kind of attention can feel suffocating. She was working non-stop, often jumping from one emotionally draining role to another. Directors adored her professionalism, but few understood the toll it took. Michelle once admitted that fame made her feel disconnected from real life. She missed normalcy, family dinners, privacy, and being able to walk down the street unnoticed. Despite her immense success, she often felt like a stranger to herself. Behind the camera, she dealt with another kind of pressure: Hollywood's obsession with youth and beauty. In a world where actresses were easily replaced by the next it girl, Pfeiffer faced constant scrutiny. Every wrinkle, every rumor, every relationship became tabloid fodder. Yet, instead of chasing headlines, she pulled away. She avoided Hollywood parties, declined interviews, and focused solely on her craft. Her portrayal of Catwoman in Batman Returns, 1992, became a defining moment. Wrapped in black leather and balancing between madness and strength, she embodied everything fans didn't expect from her: danger, sensuality, and emotional depth. The role turned her into a global icon. But even then, she admitted later, she was struggling to keep her sense of self. The more the world adored her, the more she wanted to escape it. During interviews, she would smile politely, but reveal little. There was always a mysterious distance in her tone, a reluctance to be fully known. Those close to her said she carried a quiet sadness, a feeling that her career's brilliance came at the cost of her inner peace. By the mid-90s, Michelle Pfeiffer had reached the kind of stardom that others could only dream of: Oscar nominations, magazine covers, and an unshakable legacy. Yet late at night, when the lights dimmed, she often wondered who she was beyond the applause. She was admired by millions, but few truly knew her. In her search for something real, Pfeiffer began to distance herself from the Hollywood machine. She longed for a quieter life, one where her value wasn't measured in box office numbers or beauty rankings. She was beginning to realize that success meant nothing without balance, peace, and authenticity. By the end of the decade, Michelle Pfeiffer was not just Hollywood's brightest star, she was also one of its most elusive. A woman loved by the world but yearning for simplicity, she was on the verge of a life-changing decision that would redefine her next chapter. By the late 1990s, Michelle Pfeiffer stood at the very top of Hollywood, adored by audiences, respected by directors, and envied by her peers. But for Michelle, the applause had begun to echo hollowly. The red carpets, designer gowns, and flashing cameras no longer thrilled her. Instead, they reminded her of a world that constantly demanded more beauty, more success, more perfection. She had given Hollywood everything, and in return, it had drained her spirit. At the height of her fame, Pfeiffer made a choice that shocked everyone. She began to step back. Slowly, quietly, she withdrew from the spotlight, turning down major roles that would have guaranteed her continued dominance. To the public, it seemed unthinkable. How could one of the most desired actresses in the world simply walk away? The truth was simpler and sadder. Michelle wanted a life that was real. She had spent years living through scripts, embodying other people's emotions, and chasing studio schedules. Now she longed to rediscover who she was when the cameras weren't rolling. A major turning point came when she married television producer David E. Kelley in 1993. For the first time, she found something Hollywood couldn't manufacture: stability. Together they created a quiet life, far removed from the industry chaos. Michelle became a mother and dedicated herself to raising her 2 children. While most stars her age were chasing awards, Michelle was attending school plays and cooking dinner at home. She described motherhood as the role that finally felt real. The decision to prioritize family over fame didn't come without sacrifice. Studios stopped calling as often. Her name faded from headlines, and younger actresses began filling the spaces she once owned. But Michelle didn't mind. The peace of anonymity was worth more than another blockbuster. Yet stepping away wasn't easy. Hollywood doesn't easily forgive absence. When she did return for occasional roles, critics questioned whether she had lost her edge. Some even called her out of touch, a phrase that stung but never changed her mind. She knew that authenticity meant saying no, even when it cost her professionally. During her years away, Pfeiffer also focused on personal growth. She became deeply involved in environmental and humanitarian causes, advocating for better living and ethical standards in the industry. Away from the glamour, she finally found clarity. She realized that her value wasn't tied to box office numbers or magazine covers. It was in the life she built outside of Hollywood's reach. Still, even in her self-imposed retreat, Michelle remained a mystery to the public. Paparazzi photos were rare, interviews rarer still. When she did appear, her timeless beauty shocked fans, not because she hadn't aged, but because she had aged gracefully, with confidence and grace few in Hollywood dared to show. She became proof that true beauty isn't about perfection, but peace. Her disappearance wasn't an escape. It was a quiet rebellion against an industry that tries to own its stars. Michelle Pfeiffer chose herself, her family, her sanity, and her happiness over fame. By the early 2000s, the world began to realize that her silence wasn't a fall, it was freedom. Michelle Pfeiffer had walked away not because she couldn't keep up, but because she finally understood she didn't have to. When Michelle Pfeiffer reemerged after years away from Hollywood, it wasn't with noise or scandal. It was with quiet confidence. There was no grand press conference or media frenzy announcing her comeback. Instead, she simply appeared on screen again, and the world collectively gasped. She was 60, luminous, elegant, and more magnetic than ever. It was as though time had honored her rather than erased her. Her return wasn't about reclaiming her old throne. It was about redefining it. In films like Mother, Is Murder on the Orient Express, and Ant-Man and the Wasp, Pfeiffer didn't try to play the youthful femme fatale of decades past. She played women with scars, wisdom, and grace, characters who had lived full lives just like her. The depth in her eyes, the calm in her voice, the quiet strength in her presence, all of it came from a woman who had truly experienced life outside the screen. Critics were quick to call it a rebirth. But for Michelle, it wasn't that at all. She had never been gone. She had simply been living. Her return reminded everyone that the passage of time doesn't destroy a star's light. It refines it. She became a living example that aging could be beautiful, even empowering. In an industry obsessed with youth, Michelle Pfeiffer stood tall as proof that authenticity never ages. What struck most people wasn't just how incredible she looked at 67, but how peaceful she seemed. Her interviews radiated warmth and contentment. She spoke openly about her past insecurities, how she once believed that aging meant fading, that wrinkles meant invisibility. But now she wore her years proudly, saying, "I've earned every line on my face." It was a message millions of women needed to hear. Her life had come full circle. From the young waitress dreaming of Hollywood, to the global icon haunted by fame, to the woman who walked away to find herself. Michelle Pfeiffer had become the embodiment of balance. She no longer chased the camera. The camera came to her. Even younger generations, many of whom had never seen her golden-era films, found themselves drawn to her energy. Social media lit up with admiration, fans calling her the queen of timeless beauty. Yet beyond the glamour, what truly made people gasp wasn't her face, it was her spirit. Today, at 67, Michelle Pfeiffer stands as a quiet revolution in Hollywood. She's living proof that life doesn't end when the spotlight dims. It just begins in a different light. She continues to act selectively, choosing roles that challenge her, inspire her, and represent real women. Off-screen, she invests her time in family, environmental causes, and her own fragrance line, each endeavor done with the same authenticity that defined her acting. In truth, Michelle Pfeiffer's greatest transformation wasn't physical, it was emotional. She has become a symbol of self-acceptance, resilience, and grace in an industry that rarely allows women to age on their own terms. So when people say, "Try not to gasp when you see her today," it's not because of how she looks, but because of what she represents. She is living proof that beauty is not in resisting time, it's in embracing it.